If you take the world and you cut it a 32ndth, and this is the arable land of the world. And if you peel, this is the topsoil of the planet. It's the cultivatable land of the planet. And it takes about 100 years to make an inch of topsoil, and you can lose it in a bad weekend. So everything that we depend on in our agricultural systems, all the food that we enjoy, is grown in this 32ndth. And I thought that's what I would talk about today. Agriculture finds itself in the middle of a very lively debate, whether it's food security, food availability, food prices, food safety, energy, biofuel, good thing, bad thing, water and the amount of water that agriculture consumes, climate change, agriculture's part in that, and potential mitigant of agriculture and climate change. And then the last one, which is more people going to bed hungry at night. So sub-Saharan Africa in particular. Agriculture finds itself in the middle of that range of conversations, more so today than ever before. So how do you feed more people on a decreasing footprint? Because the misleading thing about the apple analogy is the piece of land is actually skinnying down. The emerging issue, which I think dwarfs the first, is water availability. And agriculture today in the US consumes 70% of the fresh water. So the 30% that's left is Coke, Pepsi, swimming pools, industry, and the water on your table. But agriculture takes the first 70%. In Africa, it takes 95%. So we've been focusing on how can you do more with less? How can you increase yields on the same footprint and consume a third less stuff? And that's our definition of sustainability. It's how do you do more with less on the same footprint and consume less stuff? We're only focused in agriculture. That's enough. And we've been working really hard to make sustainability not just the center of our vision, but the center of what we do from a business. So our vision is doubling yields in corn, soy, and in cotton. So doubling yields by about 2030 and using a third less resources. And the resources are mainly water and fertilizer. And if we achieve that, and that's a time frame, it's the same as saving about 145 million acres of production, which is about 1.5 Californias. Average yield of corn in the US a couple of years ago, 160 bushels per acre. Doesn't really matter, just to give you a scale. In the same year, same time, the average yield of corn in Brazil, India, and Mexico, 50 bushels per acre. Same time frame, rough average in Africa, average yield 20, a little bit less than 20. This is a bad ending. So Africa needs to feed itself. This isn't really about technology. This isn't really about a technology shift enabling this. I think the rate limiting step, and it's why I was very pleased to have the invitation, because the rate limiting step in this, in my opinion, is our ability to collaborate, our ability to work across boundaries, and our ability to form links and partnerships, in many cases, with groups and individuals who have historically declared very opposing views. So I think it's the collaborative element that unlocks this opportunity. And that's why I'm so interested in your headline on integrate. I'm optimistic. I think that companies and industries with small changes can make really, really big impacts. And the trick in this going forward is how we work more collaboratively and collectively together.
How does local development happen? How far can business go? And again, maybe what is the partnership model that begins to make that real?
In that small farm system, there's kind of a cascade. Can I get access to these seeds? Can I get access to quality seeds? And if I can't afford it, what am I going to do? And the conclusion that we reached, and I don't know if this is where you were going, Eric, but the conclusion that we reached with our African work, which is now 3 years old, so we're still at very early stages, you have to get real clear really early on what you can and can't do. And that was really the first step on forming the partnership with NGOs, because they literally are holding farmers' hands. And we made the commitment on royalty-free access to the technology, and we donated the germplasm, the genetics for the white corn as well. And the rationale, to the point on access and IP and livelihoods, is it's a customer base that would not be able to afford it. The access point would not have occurred. And I think for a profit-based company, if you look to the future, and I'm selling drought-tolerant corn that uses less water, and the conversation is, Eric, get to the back of the line, you don't have any money, you don't deserve it. I think for the institution that causes harm. So I don't see this as base philanthropy. I think this is a business model for the future. The learning for me in this is talk less, do more. Mm-hmm. But I think the scalability in this drought-tolerant work is going to be high, because it's a staple in the diet. And if you think about climate change, it's going to be a more crowded, warmer world, but it gets warmer faster in Africa. And I think the scalability of this, from an access to water, I think this is replicable, but it takes a long time to build trust. You have to demonstrate milestones, you have to get agreed on goals, and then you need to measure where you are every year. And that, I think that drives scale. On long-term projects, that drives scalability, I think. The thing that really interests me in these partnerships is it is hard. It's tough to do. You have to learn to compromise. You need to be patient. It's still faster than policy. And I think for companies, companies are fluid enough and plastic enough that they can form policy and get groups around tables and get things done in a much faster cycle time. Today we're about 20,000 people at Monsanto. About half of the organization has been there less than 4 years. So we're bimodal. There's a bunch of people that look like me, and there's a bunch of people that look nothing like me. For that community that's joined Monsanto, these are extraordinarily important things when it comes to selecting a company, and I suspect they're extraordinarily important in terms of retention as well. I'm here because this is meaningful. And people can smell these things when they're phony. It's the question on trust. So I think that this is a long-term play for us.